David, Jonathan, it's good to be back. Last time I saw both of you gentlemen, we were visiting Israel with an amazing delegation that I think we were all proud of, and then felt compelled to maybe be messengers of what needs to be paid attention to moving forward. So just your gentlemen's thoughts each on the delegation. How would you share it?
Well, first off, it was a great group, and it was great to be with you guys. And I thought the intention of our trip and what we realized there were really consistent. I think all of us knew going into it through our experience in business that Israel is a powerhouse and an essential component of the med tech innovation ecosystem. But given the events of the last 5 months, we wanted to check in with our colleagues and friends and really make sure that ecosystem was robust and going strong. And unquestionably it is. And I think it's one of the things that always impresses me. And I've been to Israel probably over 30 times in my life. A lot of trips for business and focused on this particular ecosystem is the creativity, the resilience, the constant looking forward to make an impact and come up with solutions for problems that no one might has ever solved before. Is going strong. There are challenges for Israel now, and it certainly is going to have an impact, and it's having an impact on the financial resources, on the human resources, on the ability to keep pace. But I walked away going, wow, these people are strong. These are friends and colleagues, of course, but they're strong, they're staying focused, and there's no break in the innovation cycle in Israel, and that's really exciting to see. And I'm motivated, and my colleagues are motivated. I know you guys are motivated. Make sure we shine a light on that, and we do what we can to also continue to support it.
Jonathan, you had a fabulous post yesterday on LinkedIn. What's today's date? The 12th or the 13th. So this will air in a couple days, but people should check that out. Love to get your additional perspective on things.
Yeah, so when I reached out to David and a couple of other people a couple months ago, when this idea was formulating about bringing a group over, it was all about shedding a light. It was about observing the situation that was ongoing and to demonstrate whether there was a difference or not post October 7th in the medtech ecosystem that's over there. And what we saw over the time that we were there is that absolutely there's not been much that has changed. We certainly heard some stories about challenges that have been ongoing, whether it's related to staffing or supply chain or others. But ultimately, the resilience of the people over there has allowed us to have a steady state situation where the innovation is ongoing and the outcomes that are achieved by these organizations are still incredible. So coming from Startup Nation Central, we had some great discussions with them. There's been some books about this too, one called Startup Nation and a second one that was published by Saul Singer and Dan Senior just a couple weeks ago called The Genius of Israel, is really shedding the light on what makes it special about the ecosystem and the population there. I'm going to have a couple more posts that are coming out to talk about the other factors. And in the trip and the way that we wanted to organize it was around that ecosystem. So it's not only around the companies that are there, but around the VCs, the healthcare system, the entrepreneurial physicians that come out of that as well, and even the healthcare delivery in the country, which is very well organized around 4 HMOs and 45 or so hospitals. So it's a fairly small country. I don't think people realize that the Israeli population is under 10 million in total, but it's the number one place to start a company in terms of companies per capita and startups per capita. It's the number 2 in terms of venture dollars on a per capita basis as well. But there's really a couple things about the Israeli population and the innovators over there. The first is that they're really good at challenging formal hierarchies. A lot of this comes from military over there, where it's a very flat structure. It's not a very hierarchical structure, and anybody could speak up. The second is that they're not afraid to fail. Very famously, when Israelis have a business opportunity that fails, they go and they start the next one before even the first one finishes. The third is that they have an unbinding commitment to delivering outcomes for their population. The fourth is that they join forces to really support each other. And we could talk about some of the other programs, even that are ongoing amongst the investor community there, to support their companies today in the post-October 7th world. The fifth is that they don't have time. This is a country that was only started in 1948, so they're driven by this unbounding urgency there to get things through and to achieve those outcomes. And number six is that they have this irrepressible confidence and optimism for the future, not only politically and geographically, but also for their business interests as well. So those are the really, Joe, the six key themes I would say of Israeli entrepreneurs as to the reason why they've been so successful in starting companies and getting products through.
And you bring up an interesting point there about their really drive to help each other. You know, I just realized that this was the week last year, I think, if I'm not off by my calendar, that we had Silicon Valley Bank sort of implode, and then we saw some in the U.S. And certainly a much larger nation and a much more fragmented nation in certain areas. We saw some in the U.S. rally around each other, but not to the effect that you saw in Israel, as an example with Gail Neumann, who led Wartime CEO, which is an incredible program there. The first thing they did was sort of knitted together 320 different companies, and half of them are in healthcare. And they made sure that they opened up their lines, opened up their communication, and required transparency about, as a CEO, what are you going through right now? Where are you on your burn? How many of your leaders are on the front? Where's your CEO? Don't BS us. Tell us what we need so we can help you. And out of those 320, this is interesting, and I'm sure both of you guys noticed this, 60 of those are female CEOs. The female leadership in everything that we experienced, for the most part, when we were in Israel during the delegation, did you notice how many of the leaders were females? And they're not leaders because they're females. They're leaders because they're great leaders who happen to be females. So I was really impressed with the Wartime CEO program, the number of leaders that happen to be females, and the rallying and transparency, the brutal transparency, I think, which emotes from the Israeli culture.
I think it's a great point. I think that Israel is, in its short history, and its extraordinary productivity, has had to get every ounce of capability, of effort, and of good ideas out of every resource it has. And so, a country as small as Jonathan points out, and it has to take advantage of not just its men but its women, and use them as a resource to the strength of the entire nation. I mean, Israel's so interesting because I think a lot of the things that Jonathan's talked about reflect kind of individual drive and entrepreneurial drive, but also a holistic or an ecosystem approach where in crisis we need to band together, even if we are developing competitive products or we have competitive or differing views on issues or approaches. Obviously a great movie came out last year was Golda, and I was actually just I shared on Instagram a post that was Golda in my ear, talking about how little has changed. She was talking about things in her time when she was alive and how little has changed. But one extraordinary example of a woman leading a nation at a time where that was practically unheard of. And I think what you're seeing is what you were mentioning in terms of female leadership in the industry is inherent to how Israel approaches using every available resource and then going above and beyond and finding new ways to find resources and deploy resources that are just extraordinary. I mean, the whole world could learn from that example. I think in our industry, we need to learn from the Israeli example to do a better job of what we seek out to do.
Jonathan.
Well, one of the other factors, Joe, is that this is so ingrained in the culture too, with female leaders through Golda, with the Yom Kippur War in 1973, but also even in the military today, many of the new recruits in basic training are trained by females. The females are the officers who are the second or third years that are training the new recruits there for battle, whether it's through tanks or infantry or whatever else. For what Gal and the other female leaders have done in creating the Wartime CEO program, I've never heard of anything like that in my life, where they've really banded together in what is a dire situation in times to come together and not to have the VCs opine as it relates to the reimbursement strategy or any of these factors that VCs usually think about, and I was one as well, in terms of the criticism. It wasn't about the criticism. It wasn't about that aspect of, how do we turn you into an investable asset? It was much more of, let me help you with whatever you need at this point in time. Do you need contacts with other investors? Do you need a reimbursement specialist in the United States to help you out? Do you need a pathway towards recruiting in the United States to hook you up with somebody there? Do you need feedback on your deck? What do you need to get you through the next 6 or 12 months to allow your company to stay afloat and make it an investable asset thereafter?
Question for both of you, because you've both been there, David, like you said, 30 times, and Jonathan, you've been there very often. And the medtech community is aware of Israel, and those that get there often understand it. But what does most of the medtech community, and independent of the last 6 months, who've not been there before, what do they get wrong, or what are they not aware of, like from a practicality on the street of how should they be looking at technology in Israel? Why should they be looking at that way, government supported, and the non-dilutive funding and the technology, and then bringing it here to the U.S. or investing from the U.S. to Israel? So, David, I'll start with you on that, since you are out of this triad, the investment creative genius in the cohort here.
Well, first off, the productivity, disproportionate to population is extraordinary. But I think what we're seeing now is the generational impact of a country and a people that are, as we talked about, driven towards innovation, but now have, in terms of med tech innovation, generations of experience. And just one example, we went to Startup Nation on our delegation, had a presentation from the Israel Innovation Authority, which is a government body, but that essentially runs independently. That blew my mind, because I've always thought what Israel did to foster ideas, particularly at the early stage, was above and beyond anything that we see in here in the U.S. And we've got great universities, but that translation of ideas to the early capital, the early effort to see if I got a prototype to do what Jonathan called fast failure, or drive something to be incredible, was amazing. Israel created incubator systems, made leverage capital available at small amounts, $500,000, $1 million when you really needed it to see if an idea was good. What impressed me this time is they're now thinking beyond that. All right, that we do really well. We got great incubators. What's important now is the sustainable capital, the capital to support Series A, Series B, to take ideas, and particularly in our environment, that need to be brought through later stage development and actually to the market, and provide leverage so we can have more capital available. So now they have new programs that are supporting investment managers that can demonstrate available investable capital, allowing them to scale up, and really making it more attractive as an investor to want to put your money into those companies. And so to have a country and a government, and then all of these entrepreneurs and all of the mentors. I mean, one of my mentors in my career is Yuval Benor, who was one of the first med tech Israeli venture capitalists. It's still, by the way, just completely going strong. It's played a huge role in getting China engaged in Israel. Him and his generation of investors and entrepreneurs are still incredibly active. The Yossi Grosses of the world. These guys they're not retiring. They will never retire. And so that layer of experience, and what the government, what the entrepreneurs, what the investors are learning, there's no sitting back and going, we know how to do this. It's always an environment where we have to re-examine and kind of look at the next way in which we approach. And that appeals to me. I've been inspired by it in every trip. What we try and do at Orchestra Biomed, what I'm trying to learn is, how do you not stare at the problem in front of you, but rethink the whole solution, so you're looking at a whole different set of problems. And every time I go to Israel, and every time I encounter and learn from being over there, it inspires me, because the whole country thinks that way. Yeah. It's really amazing.
Jonathan, what does the country not realize, the U.S. or this market not realize about Israel?
So as David said, it's the startup nation, and I think a lot of people have thought about it as the startup nation with the great incubator environment over there. I asked a question at Startup Central when we were talking to the panel over there about is there a hesitancy to come to the US or to move in a more global fashion? And the answer was a very strong no, that these companies understand that with a population of only 10 million lives that are there, that the market opportunity in Israel is limited. So everything that they start today is very globally focused. I mean, this is why the big multinationals are there. This is why many companies like Nvidia and so forth have had great success with the technology there. But globalizing it as well is because from day one, the Israeli society has that global view as to if we're going to develop things, it's not only for us, but it's for the rest of the world primarily because that's where the market opportunity is. So there's really two ends of that spectrum. One is that there's a confidence amongst the Israelis that once they get up to the point at which they need to move something out, there's not this question and hesitancy as to whether they're going to do so, but that's baked into the plan from the very beginning. And that could be on a couple of different levels. Very early on, they could move the manufacturing out, and certainly the sales and marketing organizations are moved out. But we also saw on the other end of the spectrum too that if it does make sense to keep it in Israel, that they're willing to do so and that they can do it today. We all together visited Rapid Medical up in Yokneam, a great tech hub that's just south of Haifa, where they are manufacturing tens of thousands of units a year that are coming out of that, and they're shipping it globally. Now, their sales and marketing organization is based in the United States, but they're able to continue on with the manufacturing there, at good volumes and getting all the resources that they need in order to do so effectively. So it's a country that's growing into itself also, and building out probably a little bit more of the horizontal too, but able to really jump through to the global markets and take that view from the beginning.
Yeah, and the one other thing I want to touch on too, and you both you and David touched on it, one on the military side, one on the little Silicon Valley, which is kind of Herzliya area, is you've got Nvidia there, you've got Microsoft on the ground there, you've got these high tech hubs there, then you've got the military that most of our country understands that drives innovation back into industry, medtech, but medtech surrounded there is insinuated into the high tech area. And they're so insinuated that it permeates all of the medtech culture. And that's why I think digital in medtech and digital in AI and health tech is really the powerhouse of healthcare moving forward coming out of Israel. Would you guys have a comment on that?
Well, it was the theme actually in the IIA presentation was deep tech, essentially, convergence of technology. And probably there's no better place to bring out of the box idea or to produce out of the box ideas by taking disciplines, divergent disciplines, and leveraging them together in Israel. I think a lot of that is driven by defense. And the other aspect that Jonathan touched on earlier is how the healthcare delivery systems, we visited Rambam, are also integrated into the innovation, ecosystem. They're part of Technion. They've invested heavily in terms of, facilities, but more importantly, processes to take, technical innovations from different disciplines and different fields and make sure they're available to solve medical problems. And so that concentration of capability, that kind of necessity to always be pushing forward, I think creates an incredible environment. And you combine that with what I think is actually, one of the things that really impressed me on this trip, what Jonathan was talking about, kind of that global view. Israel is not innovating just to serve Israel. Israel is innovating to serve, patients and markets and needs all around the world. And this trip, one of the recurring themes when we met a number of startups while we were at ICI, was, hey, we need to be thinking about how we get our products to the US more efficiently. We need to be building US extensions of our organization. We need US partners. We need to run our clinical trials in the US. We need to understand what that market needs. At the same time, the same is happening for other global markets. As I mentioned, there's been a lot of investment from China and a lot of cross Israel-China innovation as well. And I think that's obviously true of Europe. Israel, in many ways, is closely connected to Europe. And so that global view combined with that kind of incredible melting pot of capability and combination of skill sets is pretty remarkable. And I don't know if there's any place quite does it or has that combination.
Jonathan, I want to give you the last word before we head out there. What do you want to leave the viewers with as this is the first of a series of many around the delegation, and a documentary coming out as well, by the way, for viewers?
Yeah, I'd just like to say that the trip for us was really the highest of highs. I did personally have the experience of going to the lowest of lows on my trip over there too. A couple of days before, I visited Kibbutz Be'eri, Kfar Aza, and Ofakim, and personally met with some of the families that were directly affected by October 7th. And you can't help but drive through the country and see not only have they come together on the business side, but they've really come together as a country here to tackle the challenges that are ahead of them. But ultimately, through these highest of highs that we saw with these visits to the VCs, to the companies, to the multinationals, and to the hospitals, we've really seen that there is this underlying spirit there that will take them through and be available on the other side here, where it's going to be even safer to invest in Israel after this whole conflict comes through at the end. So this is a place where it's a great time to invest, where valuations are probably a little bit lower, probably because of the global investing environment in combination with this too. But that is no stop at all to the innovation that's ongoing and to the resolve and resiliency of the people to get stuff done.
Yeah, and I'll leave us with this. I heard it a few times on the trip with the delegation. You do not want to miss this vintage year of investing in Israel, and I would support that if you look at the dynamics of everything.
That's a good point.
Yeah. Jonathan, thank you. David, my friend, thank you as always. I'll see you both at LSI in a couple days, and both of you will be part of this ongoing series about Startup Nation Israel and the delegation. Appreciate the time.
Yeah. See you next week. Thank you.
Be well. I'm Joe Mullings from 160 Studios. Be well.